Privacy in the modern age. Does it even exist?
The reality is, if you're on the internet, you literally might as well be on the front page of the Globe and Mail.
What data are governments and corporations collecting about us?
I think they could be a bit more forthcoming about what they're doing.
How vulnerable is our personal information?
Who has access to it? Is it just the telecom company?
And are Canada's privacy laws strong enough for all this? Critical questions for the outgoing Federal Privacy Commissioner, Jennifer Stoddart, our guest this week. Is there such a thing as privacy anymore?
Yes, I think there certainly is. In fact, there's a whole literature and a whole field of academic study if you want to pursue that further.
I'm not trying to be flip, and I know you don't think I'm trying to be flip,
no.
But it's funny how often that now comes up, where people wonder, and I had somebody ask me just the other day, does privacy still exist? Do we live in a world where anything's private anymore?
I'd say yes. You could say that being a privacy commissioner, of course, I have to say that there still is privacy. I do believe there is still privacy. I think not everything that we do is necessarily exposed. If we look at recent health privacy legislation, you can still go to your doctor and be reasonably assured that, unless there's some huge glitch, that what you say to your doctor, your medical tests, et cetera, will stay as private as they did before. Now, there are some screw-ups because of the type of technology that's the carrier for this, other than the cards in the doctor's offices 30 years ago. So there are vast areas where we still have privacy. Contrast this to maybe 40 or 50 years ago, where probably everybody in your milieu, especially if you lived in a small town, if you think of the world of Alice Munro's characters, they know a lot about each other. That's another kind of loss or lack of privacy. Now we can live anonymously in great big cities like Toronto or elsewhere in the world and carry about our business with total freedom in one sense. On the other hand, then you have this phenomenon of online tracking, the whole digital world, that will be able to track your positions, that will be able to analyze every tweet that you send, every Google search that you make, every email, if they choose to or can.
Let's tick off a few boxes, because I think it's some of the areas where people wonder. They've heard or seen or theorized that there are issues in terms of their privacy. Your income tax records, what you file. You convinced, you happy that they're secure, that they remain private?
Well, I'm convinced of that, I guess about 99-point-something%. And you're probably thinking of the last annual report I made on government functioning under the Privacy Act. And indeed, there we had seen that there was a history of snooping for as long as I've been Privacy Commissioner, 10 years, by very few employees, I must say. There's no idea that this is widespread.
And are we talking about like individual snooping, not an organized snooping campaign or organized access into records?
No, not what we saw in our audit, Peter. What we saw were individuals that were snooping into files in which they had a personal interest. Sometimes somebody they were dating, sometimes their neighbor, sometimes an ex, to find out how much money they really paid because they were fighting about alimony or, child support, things like that. And we saw no reason to think that this is anything but an exception that we can't tolerate. So I would say yes, generally your information is safe in the hands of government.
You touched on medical records. What about banking records when sort of going outside of government? Although not necessarily. I mean, intelligence services can look at things, but banking records, your history of transferring of money, your history of payments, safe?
Yeah, I think with Canadian banks, we're very well served. They were behind the impetus to set up the private sector legislation. Banks have been in the business of confidentiality for centuries. But again, there are mishaps. A lot of these issues have to do with human errors. Well, there's two problems. Human error, human curiosity, the same phenomenon, what I call the eternal triangle, person, partner, rejected partner, revenge, and so on. This went to the Court of Appeal about 2 years ago, where the Court of Appeal found that there was a tort of interfering with people's solitude, and gave damages to one bank employee who was snooping in the account of the new partner of her former husband. So these things happen in the banking world, but I think generally we're well served by Canadian banks. The big issue for banks these days are the continual assaults by badly intentioned people on the internet who are trying to take down the banking sites. And so there's huge security costs, I believe, now for Canadian banks.
As somebody who's been in this role for 10 years, a time of massive technological change, new possibilities for intrusion, and a series of major international leaks that have brought attention to what intelligence services in our world, in the West, have been doing with their own citizens. How worried do you get?
I'm concerned that all the warnings that were given over time were not picked up, and then in fact we've discovered the worst. It's kind of worse than we could imagine. And so in a way, now that we've seen things far beyond anything that any of us, let's say people, privacy regulatory world, thought were happening, I'm in fact optimistic that faced with this huge outpouring of information about a system that was supposedly secret, there will finally be action.
Why would you be optimistic that perhaps these latest revelations could make a difference? Because it almost seems like, the genie's out of the bottle here. We now know what governments have been doing, and quite possibly our own government has been doing. And why would they stop?
Well, if you look at the outpouring, what is interesting is the outpouring of public concern around the world, and it comes up again and again. It comes up now in trade talks. It comes up in the internal politics of all these various Western democracies. It comes up with, President Obama having to phone Madam Merkel and
try to
Monsieur
explain why he's been
Hollande.
listening to her
Exactly.
cell phone conversation.
Yeah,
but
I don't think they're going to go away.
No, but
we
doesn't
have to
all
face
that
this.
do is ensure that they'll try to be even more secretive the next time? That they'll have better technology to do whatever it is they're doing?
I don't know. If you set up, but I'll say if you set up a proper oversight with the proper knowledge, the proper people on it, I would think they would be able to guess what the security agencies are doing, and more importantly, are they staying within the law? The issue is not that we have these surveillance agencies. The issue is not the need for surveillance. I think we'd be naive if we said there's no need for surveillance. The issue is, and I think particularly in the American case, from what we know more about it now, is it within the law? Is it within the law for Canadians, the laws that Parliament have passed? Are our spy agencies then following the letter and the spirit of the law, or are they going over those bounds?
When we come back, privacy and technology.
You should assume that nothing you do online, nothing you send in an email, nothing you say on a telephone, you should assume somebody else has the potential to either hear them or read them or see them. Am I over the top when I say that?
The answer from Canada's Privacy Commissioner, Jennifer Stoddart, right after this.
Matthew Milan is quitting Facebook.
Their business model is actually pretty traditional in terms of saying, how can we mine the data from these people and then basically use it to drive advertising?
Facebook is planning to share your personal information with third-party companies for marketing. Most galling to many is how difficult Facebook has made it to opt out of the information sharing.
What I assume has been a major part of your work, the challenges and the concerns that you've faced over the last at least half dozen years or so, and that would be the social media aspect.
Yes.
Has it been that much? Has it been the major focus that you've had over the last
I
Half
would
dozen
say
or so
yes.
years?
In the last 5 years, certainly social media and the impact of social media have become a priority for the office, because as you know, the more traditional sectors, I mentioned banks, there it's becoming more or less routine. They know the laws, they know, there are a few slip-ups, but they're continuing their business as they've always done their business, so more or less. The social media are a completely different world, and we decided that we have to master this world, or at least keep up with it, because they're taking new risks, they're doing new and innovative things, but few of them are based in Canada, so they're not really very familiar with Canadian law, if they know anything about it or care anything about it in some cases. So that's been a huge, huge task for us.
What's your major concern
My
on the social media front?
Yeah, my major concern, and I've expressed this several times, is that Canadian laws are not sufficiently powerful for the social media creators to really take them into account as a risk factor, because they don't really provide for any kind of sanction if you don't follow them. So if I set up some kind of new social media network idea, application, and so on, I can probably make $1 million, several million, even more money before the Privacy Commissioner of Canada gets to investigating me, figuring how I do it, because every time I do it's news, so the people at my office have to figure out what is really happening. What are they doing with personal information? And then as the law stands now, they can just sign an agreement and say, oh, we'll stop doing that, we'll do something else that's more legal in the future. That's all that happens.
Who's doing it right? Who could we look at to say, we should be doing it like that country does it?
In terms of countries, I think some very interesting things are going on in the European Union. I know a lot of multinationals, and particularly social media companies, are very alarmed by it. But Europe is looking at these developments and is saying, we need some kind of sanction. If this social media company comes in and does all these very powerful things with our personal information, how do we dissuade them? So they're going to probably pass in the spring a new law which will not only simplify the administration of the law, but also provide for fines up to, I think, something like 3 million euros, which is about, it'd be about 5 million, about
Yeah,
5
$4 or
million
$5 million. Yeah.
Canadian dollars, yeah. Really quite important fines, or a percentage of their world turnover. And so this is seen with some alarm by these companies, which makes me think that this is something that would make them take into account the personal information protection rules of the country where they want to do
When you
business.
ring the alarm bell on this, does anyone listen?
There was a minority report that came out of the Ethics Committee. That's the committee to which I report as Privacy Commissioner. A minority report that retained this message that said, yes, social media is a big presence. The Silicon Valley developments are hugely picked up in Canada, and we can see that they don't always or grudgingly follow Canadian privacy rules, and suggested that the law be changed. That was a minority report of that parliamentary committee, though.
Do you think young people, young Canadians, need to be better educated as to what it is they're doing with social media, how exposed, how potentially vulnerable they are?
Absolutely, but it's not just the young people. In fact, from polling we've done, it seems the young people, not surprisingly, are more savvy about their settings. It's people maybe in my age group that are a little more naive about what may be happening. They go on Facebook, for example, to see their grandchildren and then don't adjust their settings and things like that. So I think digital education is an education challenge for all Canadians.
I was looking at a law that's being, you probably heard about it in California, where they're considering the option or the possibility that young people, 18 and under, can have their whole history on social media erased if they ask for it.
Yes.
Is that realistic? Is that something that should be
Well,
thought
I
of,
think it
considered?
is, and I thought it was very interesting. California is one of the most progressive states in the Union on this, and they're picking up on the European idea, which is an old an old continental law idea about the right to be forgotten, that, it's the idea that we have, after you have a pardon, after you've done your prison sentence, after you have a pardon, then you have made things right with society and it should no longer appear on your record. And the Americans then are picking this up in the right to erasure, the idea that, as we all live our lives out on the net to some extent, even whether we're involved in social media, what we do at 30 is very different what we're doing at 15. I think if all my youthful challenges from the age, 8 or 10 now, were still living and following me when I'm almost retired, it would be really scary. You have to live your life. You have to make mistakes. And when you're young, you try things out that later on don't look so smart. But that's part of growing up. So I feel very strongly that this is an important right. We have it in our own laws. It's part of the fair information principles. And it's articulated in our own laws, the right to correct the record.
I was at a school talking to some high school students last month. And one of them asked me, what should I consider when I'm using the internet, when I'm on Facebook or Twitter? And I said, and I'm no expert, but I said, you should assume that nothing you do online, nothing you send in an email, nothing you say on a telephone, you should assume all those things somebody else has the potential to either hear them or read them or see them. Am I over the top when I say that?
No, I think you're absolutely wise. And that's the unfortunate truth. And one of the challenges of our society is to what extent will this have a chilling effect on free speech and freedom of expression if all these things are always going to follow us and somebody's going to dig us up to confront us in some flyaway moment of our youth or when we thought we weren't being overheard and so on. That's a very important issue.
How worried do you get about that?
I worry that the pace at which our laws move, the pace at which the courts move, is not going to let our society, Canadian society, deal in time with this. And so we're going to have either aberrations kind of acting out, or we're going to have a lot of victims, like in the cyberbullying issue that's been going on for years. As long as I've been Privacy Commissioner, we're finally starting to look at this. Or that it will lead to a greater disrespect for the laws, and I think respect for the laws and buy-in for the rules of your society is part of a healthy society. And so I think if we don't move to control the worst excesses of this, we're going to have even more cynicism on the part of citizens about what corporations or what government's doing with our personal information.
Still to come.
Should we worry about governments, about our government, being too invasive of our own privacy?
I think we should.
Final thoughts with Canada's Privacy Commissioner, Jennifer Stoddart, right after this.
Location tracking is another example of how we're being watched. Computer users can be tracked through an IP address. Employees can be monitored with keystroke software. There's email and cell phone surveillance. Our electronic footprint is expanding. This tech expert says innovation and convenience appear to trump any concerns over privacy.
Given what you know and what you've learned over 10 years, do you worry about things like credit cards, like the bank, your income tax, going through airport security? Are there things that you've learned about all these things now that you worry about?
Yes, I do. I do. Certainly there are a lot of them that I worry about, because you see not only is there a huge army of, I guess what Inspector Japp would call the criminal element in the Poirot, there is a whole underground movement to attack financial institutions, and it's really scary, the data breaches that are happening. Many of those are reported to our office on a voluntary basis, but we see them happening around the world. So that very few, we saw the Government of Canada a couple of years ago was attacked by mysterious sources and so on. Nothing is really safe or very few things are really safe, I think. Now, the Government of Canada, it seems, had not put on the patches that were necessary for that time, so I can't say you can't always keep something safe. I think if you put enough time and energy and probably resources into it, you can. But there's certainly concerted attacks on our infrastructure, and we should be worried about that. So I do worry about that.
Last point, do you worry, and should we worry, about governments, about our government, being too invasive of our own privacy?
I think we should. I think that governments have to stay a healthy distance from the population. And of course, it's tempting for governments to try and know more and more and more because, to be fair to them, they can then streamline services, offer people what they want, and so on. So
that's what the census was for.
Exactly. Well, you know, censuses are now a very passé way of getting information, it seems. There's more accurate ways of getting information. So I'd say yes.
Yeah, but some of those ways you don't like.
Such as?
Well, where things can be done in a way that they shouldn't be done to access information.
Yeah, I think first of all the government has to tell us when it's getting our information, what it's doing with it, and what it'll be used for. And I think there's going to be a tendency as there's more and more data, there's a whole big data phenomenon where you just take, you know, reams and reams of data and run algorithms and then have models. And, you know, you'd hate for the government to be making decisions just based on models that come out of a mathematical exercise. So we always have to make sure that there's real life checks, but you have to make sure that, you know, citizens get some kind of window into what the government's doing with their data. And that I worry as we become more sophisticated. That asking for my file, that someday it's going to be said, well, we can't give you your file across government because it's just too complex, or I get just a ream of numbers that I don't understand. So I think government seen from inside has got to think going forward how it's going to explain what information it has. It has something now called InfoSource, which just lists the personal information banks that different Canadian departments and agencies have. I think it's less than useless. You just looked at these banks. What do you as a citizen understand, you know? There's got to be, to a more digitally, to a better educated population, much more digitally aware, there has to be some kind of real explanation of what they're doing with our personal information.
The challenge for governments in the future and for the next privacy commissioner.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks so much for this.
Thank you very much, Peter.